They thought the old RV in the forest was empty, forgotten by time and rust. But a veteran Navy SEAL's dog stopped cold, smelling something no human could see. Someone had tried to burn the truth before it could be found. Hidden inside that RV was a life waiting for someone brave enough to listen. This is a story about instinct, faith, and the signs we ignore too easily. Because sometimes, God doesn't shout. He sends a warning on 4 legs. Tell us where you're watching from, and like and subscribe to K9 Navy SEAL Stories for more. The northern forest wore daylight the way a cathedral wore stained glass. Bright, clean, almost holy. Sunlight sifted through tall evergreens and landed in soft coins on the ground. Ferns spread their fronds like green hands, and the air smelled of cold water, pine resin, and the faint sweetness of moss. Somewhere beyond the trees, a lake flashed silver blue between trunks, as if the world had tucked a mirror into its pocket and forgotten to hide it. Rowan Calder drove slowly, one hand light on the steering wheel, the other resting near the gear shift like a habit he'd never fully put down. He was 43 and built like a promise kept, 6'1", broad-shouldered, compactly strong. No showy muscle, just the kind that came from years of moving with purpose and carrying weight without complaint. His face was all angles and hard edges softened by time. A sharp jawline, faint lines at the corners of his eyes, and a rough, close beard that refused to grow into anything polite. His eyes were a rare storm color, blue-gray, deep-set, quiet but awake, like they were always listening to the world, even when his mouth chose silence. His hair was cut short and practical, dark brown with early silver at the temples, the kind of cut that didn't ask questions or waste time. His skin was sun-browned and weathered, and though he looked calm behind the wheel, calm on Rowan was less peace and more discipline, like a lid kept firmly on a boiling pot. He wore the same outfit he wore almost everywhere now, the uniform of a man who trusted function more than fashion. An olive field jacket with pockets that had known maps and gloves, dark cargo pants, and a red and deep blue plaid shirt underneath that brought an odd warmth to his otherwise quiet palate. His boots were brown leather, scuffed and softened from miles, and an old military watch sat on his wrist, its face lightly scratched, as if time itself had taken a swipe at it and failed. A pocket knife rode discreetly in his jacket, and on his back, when he stepped out, would be an Eberle stock half-track pack, built for longer days than most people planned for. In the passenger seat sat Valko. Valko was a German Shepherd K9 with a coat like dusk caught on fire, black saddle over golden tan, short-haired but thick and healthy, as if he'd been carved out of sturdy weather. He wasn't bulky, he was balanced. Muscle sat on his frame with the clean economy of an athlete. His stance, even while seated, carried the quiet authority of a working dog who didn't waste motion. His eyes were the most unnerving part. Dark, intelligent, and steady, not the warm, goofy gaze of a pet expecting treats, but the focused stare of someone taking inventory of the world. Valko's ears shifted as the truck moved, reading the forest the way Rowan once read rooftops and alleyways. He was disciplined, loyal, and sensitive to things humans pretended not to notice. The change in wind, the wrong kind of silence, the invisible tremor of fear on a person's skin. Rowan glanced at him and let a dry little smile tug one corner of his mouth. "Relax, Sergeant," Rowan said, voice low. "It's a trail inspection, not an invasion." Valko didn't look at him. He looked out the window, as if considering whether Rowan had just told the funniest joke of the year. The job was simple on paper. Assess a remote trail area for maintenance, note any hazards, maybe flag a few fallen limbs. The kind of work that gave Rowan a reason to keep moving without needing to explain why staying still felt like drowning. But the forest had its own paperwork, and it didn't sign anything in ink. Rowan turned onto a narrow dirt track that threaded deeper between trees. The path was soft with needles and damp earth, and the truck's tires crunched through scattered leaves like quiet applause. Then Valco's posture changed. It was subtle. Just a tightening through the shoulders, a slight lift in the head, a pause in the rhythm of his breathing. His ears pricked forward, and his nose tipped toward the windshield, tasting the air as if the world had suddenly delivered a message written in scent. Rowan slowed. "What is it?" he murmured. The humor gone now, replaced by that calm vigilance that used to be his daily bread. Valco let out a soft sound, almost a whine but controlled, like he was keeping his voice behind his teeth. Rowan stopped the truck. The forest held its breath. He stepped out, the cool air greeting him like a splash of clean water. Valco hopped down behind him, landing quietly, already scanning. Rowan adjusted the strap of his pack and moved forward, boots pressing into the leaf-littered ground. At first, Rowan didn't see it. Then he did. Half hidden behind a curtain of ferns and low branches, a vehicle sat in the woods like a relic left behind by a forgotten god. A motorhome. An old RV, white once, but now streaked and freckled with rust, the color of dried blood. Moss sprawled across the roof in thick green mats, with little tufts of grass poking up like the forest had started building a garden on top of it. The side windows were shattered, dark holes gaping into the interior. Vines clung to the edges, and leaf litter piled on the hood as if autumn had made it a bed. It looked less like a machine and more like a beached whale. Massive, tired, surrendered to time. Rowan stood still, studying it. He'd seen abandoned things before, buildings, equipment, even dreams. But the RV had a strange presence, like it was waiting. Not dead exactly, just sleeping, listening. Rowan exhaled through his nose, letting out a quiet, almost amused breath. "Well," he said, "that's a charming little surprise." Valco didn't share the joke. The dog moved forward with measured steps, nose low, circling the RV slowly. He stopped at the door, sniffed along the seam, then shifted to the ground beside the steps. His tail held still, not wagging, not tucked, neutral but alert. Rowan's eyes narrowed. He watched Valco the way you watched a compass needle when the sky was cloudy. "What do you smell?" Rowan asked. Valco's head lifted slightly. He didn't bark. He didn't scratch. He simply stared at the RV's broken window, staring so hard it made Rowan's skin tighten. And then Valco sat. Not casually, firmly, like a soldier taking a knee, like a sentinel planting himself in place. Rowan felt something stir in his chest, a familiar sensation from another life. The moment before a door opened. The moment before you found out if your instincts were wrong. He took a step closer. The RV's metal skin was pitted and scarred. Rust flaked under the touch of his glove. The air smelled like damp wood and old upholstery, decay mostly. But underneath it, faint as a ghost whisper, human. Not fresh, not yesterday, but not ancient either. A layered scent, as if someone had been here, left, returned. Like footsteps that never fully stopped coming back. Rowan's mouth went dry. He tried for humor again, because humor was easier than admitting his heart had started to run. "You're telling me this thing's not just a museum exhibit," Rowan muttered to Valco. Valco's ears flicked. His eyes never left the window. Rowan didn't touch the door. Not yet. Instead, he pulled his phone and took a few photos from different angles, the front, the sides, the broken windows. He zoomed in on the moss-covered roof, the rust patterns, the tire that looked half sunken into the soil. Old habits, yes, but also respect. If this was a story, he didn't get to barge into it like an uninvited narrator. He crouched, studying the ground. Leaves, mud, pine needles. A few scuffs near the door, but nothing obvious. Still, the soil was damp, soft. It held secrets well. Valco suddenly leaned forward, nose sweeping along the lower edge of the RV's door. Then his paw came up and scraped once at the earth. Rowan, attention snapped down. What? Valco pawed again, more insistently, digging through leaves. The motion wasn't frantic. It was precise. Rowan shifted closer and brushed aside the leaf litter with his gloved hand. A strip of cloth emerged, damp and dirty, the color once perhaps blue or gray, but faded now. Threadwork along its edge caught the light. Letters. Rowan's breath caught as he cleared it fully. North Star. The words were stitched in blocky, sturdy embroidery, not decorative, practical, like the label on a duffel bag or the patch on a jacket. Rowan stared at it longer than he meant to. Something in him moved, something quiet and old. A bell rung deep inside a submerged place. North Star, a guide, a fixed point. Something you followed when everything else shifted. Rowan swallowed, his throat tight, and his mind did what it always did. It tried to make the moment small enough to survive. Someone really named their death wagon, he murmured, voice dry, romantic. Valco looked at him in a way that made the word romantic feel like a poor disguise. Rowan tucked the cloth into a pocket of his jacket like a piece of evidence, or a token from a myth. He stood, eyes scanning the forest around them. The trees were still, too still. Sunlight kept pouring down like nothing was wrong. Birds kept singing as if the world was innocent, and yet Valco's body remained coiled, his senses pinned to the RV like a magnet to iron. Rowan found himself remembering another scent, long ago, sharp and wrong. Gasoline, smoke, the kind of smell that didn't belong until it did, and then it belonged to tragedy. He pushed the thought away like a man closing a door in a storm. Not today, he told himself. He shifted his weight, took another slow step toward the RV's entrance, and raised his hand, then stopped again. A part of him wanted to open the door. A larger part of him, the part that had learned the price of curiosity, wanted to mark the location and leave. He compromised. Rowan backed away slightly and keyed his phone, marking the GPS coordinates. He snapped another photo of the door, the cloth patch in his pocket like a stone. He looked at Valco. All right, Rowan said softly, voice not joking now. We don't rush this. We don't play hero. We don't do anything stupid. Valco remained seated, eyes fixed, as if the dog had already signed a contract Rowan hadn't read. Rowan exhaled slowly. He turned, scanning the forest again, and that was when Valco's head jerked toward the wind. The dog's nostrils flared. Then he sneezed. Sharp, sudden. Rowan froze. Because the wind carried something new across Rowan's face, so faint he might have missed it if Valco hadn't reacted first. A thin thread of scent that didn't belong with moss and pine. Gasoline. Not strong, not close, but present, like a warning whispered from far down the trail. Rowan's humor vanished completely. He stared at the RV again, and the rusted beast stared back with its broken windows like blind eyes. Rowan had come to inspect a trail, but the forest, it seemed, had decided to inspect him instead. And Valco, steadfast, unmoving, kept watch, as if guarding a sleeping star that wasn't supposed to be found. Rowan didn't leave the forest right away. He stood a few yards back from the RV, letting distance cool the moment the way a soldier cools a barrel after a long burst. The trees remained calm, sunlight still generous, as if the world had already moved on from whatever truth the rusted vehicle held. Valco stayed planted near the steps, posture firm, eyes scanning, no longer curious, but committed. Rowan knew that look. It meant, this place matters. He took out his phone, thumb hovering, then tapped a number he didn't use often, but never deleted. "Mina," he said when the line connected. "I need a ranger." She arrived 35 minutes later in a dust-streaked green pickup that wore its age honestly. Mina Holloway stepped out with the confidence of someone who belonged exactly where she stood. Early 30s, average height, lean but strong in the way that came from hiking miles rather than lifting weights. Her dark hair was tied back in a low ponytail that had clearly been retied more than once that morning, and her skin carried the even tone of someone who worked outdoors year-round. A small scar cut through one eyebrow, old, pale, and unconcerned with vanity. Her uniform was practical. Forest green ranger jacket, utility pants, boots laced tight. A radio clipped to her shoulder murmured softly, like the forest had given her its own voice. Her eyes were sharp, not suspicious, just trained. The kind that noticed when something didn't fit and waited patiently for the reason to show itself. She took in the RV in one long look. "Well," Mina said, exhaling, "that's not on any of my maps." Rowan gave a small nod. "Didn't think it would be." She glanced at Valco, who watched her without hostility, but with unmistakable evaluation. Mina crouched slightly, not reaching for him, letting him decide the terms. "K9, she asked. "Retired," Rowan said. "Still working?" Mina smiled faintly. "Aren't we all?" She stood and pulled on gloves. "All right. Let's do this by the book." They approached the RV together. Up close, the decay told a complicated story. The interior was dim, the air heavy with damp fabric and rot. But it wasn't the chaos of abandonment Rowan expected. Someone had cleaned, badly, hurriedly, but intentionally. One corner of the floor was noticeably clearer than the rest. An empty tin sat near the far wall, its edges blackened with recent soot. Mina crouched, running a finger along the inside of the tin. "Still warm within a day," she said. Not campfire warm, controlled. Rowan absorbed that without comment. Valco moved past them, nose tracing the floor, then stopping near the base of the dinette. He lifted a paw and scraped once. Slow, deliberate. Rowan knelt beside him. He peeled back the loose carpet, revealing a narrow cut in the floorboard. Mina leaned in. Hidden storage. Inside, a compact survival kit, water filter, emergency blanket, power bank, bandages, all practical, all chosen by someone who knew they might have to leave fast. And beneath it, wrapped in oilcloth, an old handheld voice recorder. Mina's jaw tightened slightly. "That's not camping gear." "No," Rowan agreed. "That's evidence." On the far wall, just above where the vinyl had peeled away, Mina spotted something else. 3 shallow grooves cut into the wood. Beside them, a rough outline of a wolf's head. Her expression shifted, subtle but unmistakable. "That mark," she said quietly, "shows up near illegal routes. Timber, sometimes worse. It's not a logo, it's a message." Rowan looked at it, then back at the forest beyond the broken window. Territory. Exactly. A distant engine sound drifted through the trees. Mina reacted instantly, reaching out and pressing 2 fingers against Rowan's sleeve. Not grabbing, just signaling. She pointed. They moved off the path and into cover without speaking. Leaves dampened their steps. The engine passed far enough away to stay unseen, but close enough to feel intentional. Mina leaned close and whispered, "There's silence that comes from snow, and silence that comes from money." Rowan understood the difference. They waited until the sound faded. Then Mina retrieved a compact trail camera from her pack. "Protocol," she said. "We don't spook whoever this is. We let them show themselves." She mounted the camera with practiced ease, angling it toward the RV without making it obvious. Rowan watched Valco as she worked. The dog's body had relaxed just enough to stay still, but his attention never drifted, like a guard who knew his shift wasn't over. When they finished, Rowan stepped back and studied the RV again. It didn't look abandoned anymore. It looked occupied by absence. They walked a short distance away to debrief, leaning against the tailgate of Mina's truck. Mina took notes. No record of a registered RV here. No permits, no reports, officially. Rowan nodded. Unofficially? She hesitated, then shrugged. People go missing in pieces up here. Not enough at once to make noise. Rowan met her eyes. Someone lived here. Or hid, Mina said. They fell quiet. Valco suddenly lifted his head. Not alarmed, focused. He turned away from the RV and stared down the trail, then sat again. This time facing the forest, not the vehicle. Rowan frowned. That wasn't a guard position. That was a warning. He followed Valco's gaze and saw nothing. Just trees, light, distance. Mina noticed too. What's he doing? Rowan watched Valco's ears shift, adjusting to something only he could hear. Listening, Rowan said, to someone who thinks they're quiet. Mina straightened slowly. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Then Valco turned his head and looked directly at Rowan. Not urgently, not afraid. Just expectant. Rowan felt the weight of that look settle in his chest. This is where you decide, it said without words. Rowan reached into his jacket and felt the cloth patch in his pocket. The one marked North Star. He didn't take it out. He didn't need to. Camera stays, Rowan said finally. We don't touch the recorder yet. Mina nodded. Agreed. Rowan added, quieter. But we don't pretend this is just paperwork. Mina met his gaze. No, we don't. They packed up carefully, leaving the RV as they found it. Almost. As they walked back toward the vehicles, Rowan glanced over his shoulder. The RV sat unchanged, rust glowing faintly in the afternoon sun, moss bright as if newly washed. But now it felt different. Less like a ruin, more like a signal fire waiting for night. Valco paused once at the edge of the clearing, looking back longer than necessary. Rowan didn't rush him. Some silences, he knew, weren't empty. They were holding their breath. The town revealed itself the way good things often did, slowly and without asking for attention. A ribbon of road curved down toward the lake, and suddenly the forest loosened its grip. Sunlight widened. Houses appeared with porches facing the water, paint faded but cared for. A small marina rocked gently against its posts, boats tapping wood like knuckles on a door. The lake itself lay open and calm, blue enough to look forgiving. Rowan parked near the main street and cut the engine. After the hush of the forest, the town sounded almost loud. A bell rang as someone opened a shop door. Laughter drifted from a bench where two older men argued amicably about fishing. Somewhere, butter hissed on a hot griddle. Valco jumped down from the truck and stood at Rowan's side, posture alert but not tense. His tail hung low and steady. Towns made him cautious in a different way than woods did. Too many overlapping scents. Too many lives brushing past each other like loose threads. Rowan adjusted his jacket and walked toward the diner with the red awning. Inside, warmth wrapped around him immediately. The smell of coffee and frying potatoes filled the air, rich and grounding. The place was small but alive. 4 booths, a counter worn smooth by elbows and years, and a jukebox that looked like it had opinions about modern music. Behind the counter stood Mabel Harlow. She was in her late 60s, tall for a woman her age, with a frame that had thinned but not weakened. Her gray hair was pulled into a loose bun that never quite stayed neat, and her face held lines earned from both laughter and worry. Her skin was pale but healthy, freckled in places where the sun had always found her. She wore a faded apron dusted with flour and grease, as if it had grown that way. Her eyes were sharp and kind in equal measure, the kind of eyes that could cut through nonsense, but still make room for grace. She looked up as Rowan entered, took him in from boots to shoulders to the quiet set of his jaw, and smiled without surprise. "You're not from here," she said, pouring coffee into a chipped mug. "But you're not lost either." Rowan returned a small smile. "Is it that obvious?" Mabel slid the mug across the counter. "Lost men look around like they're hoping the walls will explain themselves. You look like you're asking questions without speaking." Rowan accepted the coffee. "I had a few questions I was hoping you might answer." Mabel leaned her elbows on the counter. "Depends what kind." Rowan nodded toward the window where the lake glimmered. "About the woods?" That smile faded. Not entirely, but enough. "Of course it's about the woods," she said softly. "Everything that matters around here eventually is." She glanced at Valco, who sat neatly near Rowan's boots, eyes scanning the room, but body relaxed. "And who's this handsome officer?" she asked. "Valco," Rowan said. "He keeps me honest." Mabel hummed approvingly. "Good dogs always do." Rowan waited. He'd learned long ago that silence could be an invitation if you let it breathe. Mabel sighed and straightened, wiping her hands on her apron. "You're asking about Eden Price," she said, not looking at him. Rowan's gaze sharpened. "I haven't said a name." "No," Mabel replied. "But you came from the trees with that look. And Eden's the only name that's been sitting heavy lately." She poured herself a coffee and took a sip before continuing. "Eden was smart. Too smart for a town that likes its evenings predictable. Mid-30s, slim but strong. Walked like someone used to covering ground. Dark blonde hair she kept tied back most days. Skin fair but weathered from being outdoors more than indoors. Eyes always scanning, like she was waiting for the world to blink first." Mabel's mouth tightened slightly. She asked questions about trucks on the back roads, about late-night activity near the lake. Some folks called it curiosity. Others called it trouble. "And then she disappeared," Rowan said. Mabel nodded. "Last summer. People said she went hiking or moved on. That's what people say when the alternative makes them uncomfortable." Rowan took a slow drink of coffee. "Did she come here often?" "Every morning," Mabel said. "Same booth, same eggs, black coffee, tipped too much, like she was apologizing for something she hadn't done yet." Rowan felt something click into place. Not a solution, just a shape. He paid and thanked Mabel. As he turned to leave, she called after him. "Whatever you're looking for," she said, voice steady, "be careful what you wake up. This town sleeps because it wants to." Outside, Rowan paused by the truck. Valco's ears had turned toward the far end of the street, his attention drawn to a passing vehicle. A pickup rolled by slowly, dark green company logo stenciled on the door. Timberline Forestry Services. Valco's body stiffened. He moved closer, nose low, sniffing the air as the truck idled briefly at the stop sign. A low sound rumbled in his chest. Not a bark, not a growl. A warning, contained. Rowan caught it immediately. The truck accelerated and disappeared down the road. Rowan knelt beside Valco, resting a hand briefly on the dog's shoulder. "What is it?" he murmured. Valco didn't look at him. His eyes stayed on the road long after the truck was gone. Rowan straightened. He drove next to the small police station, a modest brick building with a flag out front and a bench worn smooth by waiting. Inside, the air smelled faintly of paper and disinfectant. Behind the desk stood Deputy Cormac Reed. Reed was a man in his late 50s, tall but slightly stooped, as if years of carrying responsibility had bent him forward by degrees. His face was broad and weathered, with a graying beard kept trimmed out of habit rather than pride. His eyes were brown and tired, but not unkind. They had the look of someone who'd seen enough to know better, and sometimes chose not to. He studied Rowan for a long moment before speaking. "You're the guy asking about the woods," Reed said. "Word travels fast," Rowan replied. "Only when it wants to," Reed said. "What do you want?" Rowan met his gaze squarely. "Information. About Eden Price." Reed's jaw tightened. Not anger, something closer to resignation. "She's gone," Reed said. "No evidence of foul play, no reason to keep digging." "Except the trucks," Rowan said evenly, "and the roots. And the fact that people who ask questions stop showing up for breakfast." Reed leaned back, exhaling through his nose. "This town doesn't need outsiders stirring things up." Rowan didn't flinch. "I'm not stirring, I'm listening." Reed's eyes flicked to Valco, who sat calmly beside Rowan, gaze steady and unreadable. "That dog yours?" Reed asked. "Yes." "Working?" "Always." Reed's shoulders sagged a fraction. "Some silences keep the peace," he said quietly. Rowan's voice was just as quiet. "Some silences buy time." Reed said nothing to that. Rowan left without pushing further. Outside, dusk had begun to soften the edges of the world. Lights blinked on in windows. The lake reflected the sky like a held breath. That night, Rowan returned to his rented cabin on the edge of town. It was small and clean, the kind of place meant for fishermen and weekend hikers. He fed Valco, then sat on the steps, letting the dark settle. The forest loomed beyond the clearing, patient. Valco lay beside him, head on his paws, eyes half-lidded but alert. Rowan's thoughts drifted backward, to another night, another smell, gasoline, a choice not to act, a loss that had taught him the weight of ignoring small things. A soft clink broke the quiet. Rowan's head snapped up. Something lay on the wooden step near the door, a small object catching the porch light. He rose slowly, every sense awake. It was a lighter. Plain metal, cold to the touch, and etched into its side. A wolf. 3 lines. Valco stood instantly, placing himself between Rowan and the darkness. A low, controlled sound vibrating in his chest. Rowan closed his fingers around the lighter, feeling its weight. He didn't need a note. The message was clear. "We see you." Rowan looked out toward the trees, eyes hard, breath steady. Behind him, the cabin light hummed softly. Ahead, the forest waited. And somewhere between the two, the truth had begun to follow him home. Rowan drove north out of town just after sunrise. The lake still glassed over like a held breath. The road narrowed as it climbed, houses thinning into trees, storefronts surrendering to barns, and then to nothing at all. Valco rode in silence, sitting upright in the passenger seat, head angled slightly as if tracking invisible lines across the land. He was calmer now than the night before, not relaxed, but resolved. There was a difference Rowan had learned to trust. The clinic sat at the edge of a long clearing, half swallowed by pine and birch. A modest building, weathered cedar siding, a metal roof dulled by seasons. A hand-painted sign near the drive read, "Leora Vance, DVM Field Veterinary and K9 Support." Rowan parked and cut the engine. Before he opened the door, he rested a hand on the small recorder in his jacket pocket. It felt heavier than it should have. Dr. Leora Vance opened the clinic door before Rowan knocked. She was in her early 40s, tall and lean, with a posture that suggested long hours on her feet and longer nights awake. Her dark hair was streaked with premature gray and pulled into a loose braid that brushed one shoulder. Her skin was olive-toned, her face angular but warm, with sharp cheekbones softened by attentive eyes. She wore faded jeans, a flannel shirt rolled at the sleeves, and boots marked with dried mud and disinfectant stains. Nothing about her suggested polish. Everything about her suggested competence. Her gaze dropped immediately to Valco. "Well," she said quietly, crouching without hesitation. "Hello there." Valco did not move toward her. He did not retreat. He simply observed, ears forward, eyes intent. Leora waited. After a moment, Valco stepped closer and allowed her hand to hover near his shoulder. "Good," she murmured. "You're listening?" Rowan felt tension ease from his chest. "You must be Rowan," Leora said, rising. "Mina called." "She said you could help," Rowan replied. Leora nodded once. "Come in." Inside, the clinic smelled clean, antiseptic layered with pine oil. The walls were lined with photos, search dogs in snow, muddy rescues, tired smiles caught mid-victory. Valco paused to look at one image of a shepherd coated in ice, eyes bright with purpose. Leora noticed. "That was North Point," she said. "Avalanche rescue. He worked until his hips gave out." Valco studied the image, then sat. Rowan followed Leora to a small back room where a workbench sat beneath a narrow window. She gestured for him to sit and brought over a compact audio console, worn but well cared for. "You found a recorder," she said. Not a question. Rowan handed it over. Leora examined the device with practiced care. Older model, analog memory. People use these when they don't want digital footprints. She plugged it in and adjusted the dials. Static filled the room, thin, uneven. Valco lay down beside Rowan, his flank pressed lightly against Rowan's shin. Leora worked in silence for several minutes, adjusting levels, filtering noise. Her brow furrowed with focus. Then a voice came through. At first it was barely more than breath. "Testing. If this is still working." Rowan's spine straightened. The voice was female, soft, controlled, but frayed at the edges. Each word sounded measured, as if spoken by someone rationing strength. "This is Eden Price. I don't know who will find this." Leora glanced at Rowan. He didn't look away from the console. Eden's voice continued, gaining clarity as Leora refined the signal. "There are trucks moving through the forest at night, not logging schedules, different routes. They use the old service roads near the lake, where the rock cuts low. There's a narrow break, a stone cleft. They store things there." A pause. A breath caught too long. "I asked questions. I shouldn't have asked so many at once." Rowan felt Valco's body tense. Eden's voice wavered, then steady again. "They don't pay for silence with money. They pay with fear." Another pause. "I tried the authorities. I don't trust who that reached. If you're hearing this, don't trust quiet answers. Quiet answers are bought." The recording crackled. "I contacted a K9 search and rescue volunteer group, Valkyrie Search. They helped once. They left markers. If you see signs, it wasn't coincidence." A breath, shallow now. "I'm not gone. I'm hiding. If this stops, if I stop, follow the lake. Trust the dogs. They see what we pretend not to." The recording ended. Silence returned to the room. But it wasn't empty. Rowan exhaled slowly, as if he'd been underwater longer than he realized. Leora removed her headphones. "She was scared," she said. "But she was thinking clearly." Rowan nodded. "She knew how to leave a trail." Valco lifted his head and moved closer to Rowan, resting his chin against Rowan's knee. Not anxious, grounding. Rowan placed his hand on Valco's neck. "She's still alive," Rowan said. Not as a hope, but a conclusion. Leora watched him closely. "What makes you sure?" "She didn't say goodbye." Leora considered that, then nodded. I've heard enough of those recordings to know the difference. Rowan stood. Mina and I will set eyes on the routes she mentioned. Carefully. Leora's expression hardened slightly. You don't go charging into rock cuts alone. We won't, Rowan said. We document. We step back. Leora knelt again beside Valco. And you, she said softly, are very good at knowing when to stop. Valco met her gaze, unblinking. They regrouped later that afternoon near the forest edge. Mina had maps spread across the hood of her truck, weighted down with stones. Rowan relayed Eden's words. Mina traced the lake's contour with a finger. There's a natural rock split here. Old service path runs close, but it's not maintained. Perfect for moving things unseen, Rowan said. They planned deliberately. Trail cameras placed at intersections, audio recorders hidden near the path. No confrontation, no heroics. Valco paced slowly between them, stopping occasionally to sniff the wind, then moving on. About a third of the way through their setup, Valco stopped short. Not alert, not alarmed. He sat. Rowan frowned. What is it? Valco didn't look at the trees. He looked at Rowan. There was something different in his eyes. Not warning, not fear. Recognition. Rowan felt it like a quiet hand on his chest. A memory surfaced uninvited. Years ago, another dog, another pause. A moment Rowan ignored because the mission clock was louder than instinct. The memory ended badly. Rowan swallowed. I hear you, he said softly. Valco stood and moved again, satisfied. Mina watched the exchange. He does that often? Only when I'm about to repeat a mistake, Rowan replied. They finished placing the last camera as daylight slanted toward evening. Rowan stepped back and surveyed the forest. The map Eden had drawn with her voice now had shape, direction. They didn't move further. Not yet. As they packed up, Rowan glanced once more toward the lake's distant shimmer. Somewhere beyond those trees, Eden was still breathing, and Valco, steady, watchful, walked at Rowan's side like a vow that had finally been spoken aloud. Morning laid a pale sheen across the water, turning the lake into a wide, patient mirror. Mist hovered low, curling and uncurling as if the surface itself were breathing. Pines crowded the shoreline, their reflections stretching downward like dark questions no one wanted to ask out loud. Rowan parked the truck well back from the access path. No fresh tracks, no obvious signs of recent use. That alone made him uneasy. Mina stepped out first, efficient as always, her ranger jacket zipped to the collar. She scanned the area with practiced calm, then reached into her pack and pulled out 2 compact trail cameras. Intersections first, she said. In and out, no drama. Rowan nodded. Valco waited between them, posture neutral but attentive. Tail low, ears tracking the breeze. His black and tan coat caught the light in muted highlights, muscles shifting subtly beneath short fur as he adjusted his stance. He looked less like a dog today and more like a compass that had decided on true north. They worked methodically. Mina placed cameras where the old service path narrowed, where tire ruts overlapped just enough to suggest repetition. Rowan logged coordinates on his phone, marking distances and angles with the quiet satisfaction of someone who trusted maps more than guesses. When Valco moved, they followed. He led them away from the water and toward a break in the rock line, a natural cleft where the land dipped sharply, stone walls rising on either side like the jaws of something ancient. Shade pooled there, even in daylight, and the air grew cooler, heavier. Rowan slowed. The smell hit him next. Not strong, not obvious, but present in layers. Fuel, oil, metal. Valco's nose dipped lower as they approached, movements deliberate, controlled. He paused every few steps, inhaling deeply, then continued. He wasn't pulling. He was guiding. This is it, Mina murmured. The cleft opened into a narrow passage, the stone walls scraped and scarred by time. At the base, the ground was packed hard, darker than the surrounding soil. Rowan crouched and pressed his fingers against it. "Tire marks," he said. "Heavy load." Repeated. They didn't rush. Rowan took photos from multiple angles: wheel depth, direction of travel, disturbed gravel. Mina logged GPS points and adjusted one of the cameras, angling it down the passage without making it obvious. Inside the cleft, the air smelled stale, trapped. Sunlight filtered down in thin, slanted lines, catching dust motes that drifted like slow snow. They found the first crate half hidden behind a rock outcropping. It was wooden, weathered but intact, stenciling scratched away, or Rowan photographed it without touching. He didn't need to open it to know it mattered. "Storage," Mina said quietly. "Temporary." Rowan nodded. "They don't stay long." Valco moved past them, deeper into the cleft, then stopped abruptly. He lowered himself into a sit. Not alert, not alarmed. Still. Rowan felt a familiar tightening in his chest. He approached carefully, scanning the ground where Valco's attention fixed. The soil there was disturbed differently. Lighter impressions, uneven spacing. Footprints, smaller, narrower. Human, but not built for hauling crates. Rowan followed the trail with his eyes until it ended at a flat stone near the wall. Something caught the light. A hair clip. Plastic, cracked at one edge, its once bright surface dulled by dirt and time. Rowan picked it up gently, turning it between his fingers. Mina's breath left her in a slow exhale. "That's not industrial." Rowan shook his head. "No." Beneath the stone, a scrap of paper lay folded twice, pressed flat as if someone had smoothed it down with care. Rowan unfolded it. A date. And beneath it, 3 words written in a hurried hand. "Don't trust quiet." Rowan closed his eyes for half a second. "She was here," he said. "Not relief, not triumph, just fact." They documented everything: photos, coordinates, audio samples of the cleft's acoustics. Rowan recorded distant sounds, the way the stone swallowed noise, the way footsteps echoed only when you wanted them to. They were finishing when Valco's head lifted. His ears angled forward, his body stiffened, not in fear, but in focus. Rowan froze. "What is it?" Mina whispered. Valco didn't answer with movement. He answered with stillness. Then, softly, faintly, the sound reached them. An engine, not close, but approaching. Mina cursed under her breath. "Timing's perfect." They moved fast, but not frantically. Rowan tucked the hair clip into an evidence bag. Mina adjusted the nearest camera one last time. They slipped into cover just as a truck rolled into view at the mouth of the cleft. It was a flatbed, paint dulled by dust, company markings partially obscured. 2 men climbed out. The first was tall and broad, shoulders sloped forward as if he'd learned to lean into weight. His beard was dark and heavy, untrimmed, and his jawline carried the blunt angles of someone used to forcing doors open rather than knocking. He moved with confidence that bordered on carelessness. The second man was younger, thinner, restless. His hands kept moving, adjusting gloves, rubbing at his neck. His eyes darted too often toward the trees. They spoke in low voices. Rowan lifted his phone just enough to catch audio, keeping his breathing slow. "Late again?" the younger man muttered. "Doesn't matter," the bearded one replied. "We're not staying." They moved toward the crates. Rowan's muscles coiled. Every instinct from another life screamed at him to act, to step out, to end it now. But discipline held him like a tether. Win with evidence. Save with patience. Valco lay flat beside him, body pressed to the earth, eyes never leaving the men. He was silent. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of a hunter who understood timing. The men loaded one crate onto the flatbed. The younger one hesitated, glancing toward the deeper part of the cleft. "You hear something?" he asked. The bearded man snorted. "It's the rocks. Always sounds like that." He didn't know how close he was to being right. They finished quickly, climbed back into the truck, and drove off. The way they came, Rowan didn't move until the engine noise faded completely. Then he exhaled, long and slow. Mina looked at him. "We got what we needed." Rowan nodded, though his hands still trembled slightly. Enough to ask for a warrant. They began packing up, retracing their steps carefully. About halfway back toward the lake, Valco stopped again. This time he didn't sit. He turned and looked directly at Rowan. Not urgent, not warning, questioning. Rowan met his gaze, feeling that quiet pressure build behind his ribs. The sense of standing at a threshold. "What is it, buddy?" he murmured. Valco held the look for a moment longer, then turned away and continued down the path. Rowan didn't know why that unsettled him more than the engine or the crates. But it did. They reached the vehicles without incident. The lake shimmered again through the trees, unchanged, innocent. Rowan paused and looked back toward the cleft, now hidden by stone and shadow. "They know this place is watched now," he said. Mina nodded. "Which means they'll move, or escalate." Rowan opened the truck door. "Either way, they'll make a mistake." Valco jumped in and settled, eyes forward, posture calm. As Rowan started the engine, he felt the weight of what they'd gathered. Not just evidence, but confirmation. Eden had been here. She'd thought ahead. She'd trusted signs and silence in equal measure. And now the hunters knew they were no longer alone. The lake caught the light once more, smooth and silver, giving nothing away. But beneath its calm, something had shifted. The alert came in just after dusk. Rowan was in the cabin kitchen, rinsing a mug, when his phone vibrated against the counter. Mina's name flashed once, then again, urgent enough to skip pleasantries. "Trail cam near the RV just tripped," she said. "Motion, not wildlife. 2 figures. They're circling." Rowan didn't answer right away. He crossed the room in 3 strides, clipped the leash to Valco's harness, and shouldered his pack. Valco was already there, body taut, eyes bright with a clarity that meant he'd been waiting for permission more than instruction. "We're moving," Rowan said. They drove without headlights for the first mile, the road a pale ribbon under a rising moon. Pines leaned inward, swallowing sound. Rowan kept his breathing even, the way he had learned to do when adrenaline wanted to sprint ahead without him. They cut the engine 100 yards out and went on foot. That was when Valco stopped pulling and surged forward instead, not in panic, not barking, just a sudden, urgent acceleration that snapped the leash taut in Rowan's hand. "Easy," Rowan murmured, but his heart was already answering the dog's message. The smell reached him a second later. Not smoke, fuel, sharp and wrong against the damp sweetness of moss and rot. Accelerant, fresh, volatile, like a match struck inside the chest. Rowan broke into a run. The RV came into view through the trees, its pale rusted flank catching moonlight. For a half second, everything looked the same. Still, silent. Then Rowan saw the sheen. A dark wetness streaked across the leaf-littered ground beneath the RV's steps, reflecting light in thin, dangerous lines. Gasoline. Valco lunged toward the steps, barking once, short, sharp, and then darted back, circling, nose sweeping fast, precise. He wasn't searching. He was confirming. Rowan dropped to one knee, yanked the fire extinguisher from his pack, and scanned. The flame hadn't bloomed yet. Whoever had poured the fuel hadn't struck the match or had been interrupted. Rowan didn't wait to find out which. He sprayed the ground first, then the RV's steps, white foam hissing as it swallowed the reflective sheen. He worked outward, methodical, refusing to let panic take the wheel. "Mina," he said into his phone. "We've got accelerant. No active fire. I'm neutralizing." "Copy," she replied, breathless. "State fire's en route. I'm 2 minutes out." Rowan moved around the RV, coating the lower panels, the door seam, the dirt beneath the chassis. The smell retreated, subdued, but not gone. That was when Valco froze. Not alert, not guarding, listening. His ears angled toward the RV's rear quarter, his body going utterly still in a way Rowan recognized from a lifetime ago. The moment before a door was breached, when the air itself seemed to lean forward. Rowan followed. The RV's back panel sagged, its metal skin eaten thin by years. Valco pressed his nose to a section near the floor, then scratched, once, twice, then barked again, higher this time. "Here," Rowan breathed. He set the extinguisher down and dropped to his hands, fingers probing the softened paneling. The wood gave way with a dull crack, exposing a crawl space beneath the rear bench. "Easy," Rowan said, voice low, steady. "I've got you." He pried the panel wider. A shape moved inside. A human breath. Ragged, shallow, cut through the night. Rowan's chest tightened. He reached in carefully and found an arm, thin, trembling, skin cold through damp fabric. He widened the opening and shone his light. Eden Price blinked back at him. She was smaller than Rowan had imagined from Mabel's stories. Slim, compact, her strength now folded inward by exhaustion. Her dark blonde hair was tangled and damp, clinging to a face made pale by hunger and cold. Dirt streaked her cheeks like war paint applied by fear. Her eyes, gray-green, sharp even now, fixed on Rowan with a flash of recognition that was almost disbelief. "You're real," she whispered. "Yes," Rowan said. "And we're getting you out." Valco shoved his head into the opening, whining softly, tail sweeping dust. Eden's gaze snapped to him, and something loosened in her face. A small, broken sound escaped her throat. "You found it," she said. "The North Star." Rowan didn't ask how she knew his name. He widened the opening further, braced his feet, and slid his arms beneath Eden's shoulders and knees as she weighed less than she should have. The reality of that settled into him like a bruise. As he lifted her free, she flinched, then relaxed when Valco pressed close, his solid warmth anchoring her. "I didn't stay here," Eden said, breath hitching. "Not long. I moved. The ravine, the old shed, the lake edge. Tonight felt safer." Rowan nodded. "You did everything right." Mina's headlights cut through the trees as she arrived, truck skidding to a stop. She jumped out, eyes wide as she took in the scene. Foam on the ground, the opened panel, Eden in Rowan's arms. "Oh my God," Mina breathed. Behind her another vehicle pulled up, red and white, followed by a third. 2 firefighters stepped out, both men in their 40s, faces lined by heat and long hours. One was tall and barrel-chested with a shaved head and calm eyes. The other, shorter, wiry, moving with quick efficiency. They took in the situation without questions, spreading foam and checking the perimeter. "Fire never caught," the taller one said. "Lucky." Rowan set Eden gently on a blanket Mina had spread. Leora's truck arrived moments later, tires crunching, and the veterinarian was out before the engine stopped. Leora knelt beside Eden, hands already moving, checking pulse, skin temperature, responsiveness. "Hypothermia," she said calmly. "Mild to moderate, dehydration." Eden winced, but nodded. "I know." Leora glanced up at Rowan. You saved her in time. Rowan looked at Valco, who sat at Eden's side, eyes never leaving her face. Not alone, Rowan said. As Leora worked, Eden's gaze drifted back to the RV, its rusted body now ghostly under emergency lights. They wanted it gone, she said softly. It was easier to burn a place than erase a question. Rowan's jaw tightened. They won't get another chance. Eden swallowed. My dad lived in one like that, when I was a kid. He called it the North Star because, no matter where we parked, it meant we'd make it home. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. I thought if I stayed close to it, I would too. Valco leaned in, resting his chin against her knee. Rowan let out a breath that was half a laugh, half a wound reopening. Guess I'm driving again, he murmured to the dog. Seems like my job. Valco's ears flicked, and for a moment his expression looked almost amused. Then he looked back at Eden, solemn as a promise. The firefighters finished their sweep. A state trooper arrived, took statements, nodded grimly. Evidence bags were filled, photos taken. No one said the word arson, but it hung in the air like smoke. When they loaded Eden into Leora's truck, wrapped in blankets, she reached out and caught Rowan's sleeve. They knew someone was watching, she said. This was a message. Rowan met her gaze. Then it failed. She nodded once, trusting him with a faith he felt unworthy of, and determined to earn. As the vehicles pulled away and the forest reclaimed its quiet, Rowan stood for a moment beside the RV. The foam gleamed white against rust and moss. The night smelled clean again. He rested a hand against the cold metal. This time he hadn't missed the sign. He turned, whistled softly, and Valco fell into step at his side. Together, they walked out of the clearing, leaving behind a fire that never got its due, and a life that did. The clinic smelled of antiseptic and warm blankets. Morning light filtered through the narrow windows, pale and careful, as if it understood this was a place for recovery, not spectacle. Eden Price lay propped up on a cot, wrapped in layers that made her look smaller than she was. Color had returned to her cheeks, though faint shadows still clung beneath her eyes like bruises that refused to heal all at once. Leora stood nearby, arms crossed, watching Eden with the practiced patience of someone who trusted bodies to speak when given time. Rowan remained by the wall, quiet, boots planted, hands loose at his sides. Valco lay at his feet, head resting on his paws, eyes half closed but alert, guarding without posturing. Eden took a breath. They use the forestry company as a skin, she said. Her voice was steadier now, no longer a whisper. Paperwork looks clean, permits, donations to town projects, but the trucks don't carry timber. She described routes, names she overheard, nights she'd counted headlights from the trees. She spoke carefully, not out of fear now, but precision, like someone who understood that details were a currency. They move fast, Eden continued. Never stay long. The forest helps them. Sound dies. People stop asking questions. Deputy Cormac Reed stood near the door, hat in his hands. Up close, he looked older than Rowan remembered. The lines in his face had deepened overnight, and his shoulders seemed to carry a new weight. Not guilt exactly, but inevitability. He listened without interruption. When Eden finished, the room was quiet again. Reed cleared his throat. We have trail cam footage, he said. GPS coordinates, audio, now, testimony. He looked at Rowan, then at Eden. It's enough. Mina nodded once. Enough for a warrant? Reed closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, something had settled behind his gaze. I should have pushed sooner, he said. I didn't. No one rushed to comfort him. This wasn't that kind of moment. But I will now, Reed added. He straightened, squared his shoulders, and reached for his radio. The operation began before sunset. Marked vehicles waited at the edge of town, engines idling low. State troopers stood with local deputies, their postures alert, movements economical. No one spoke louder than necessary. The forest didn't need help keeping secrets. But tonight, it wouldn't be allowed to keep lies. The warrant was signed. Rowan didn't wear a badge. He didn't need one. He stood back with Mina, Valco at his side, watching as others moved forward with authority and lights. From the ridge, they could see the clearing where the crates had been. Floodlights snapped on, cutting through shadow. Men ran. Some didn't get far. The leader did. He emerged from behind a truck, hands raised slowly, face hard and pale under the lights. He was tall, heavy-set, with a thick beard streaked prematurely with gray. His eyes were sharp but tired, the kind of tired that came from believing your own excuses for too long. His name was Caleb Marsh. Marsh spoke before anyone asked him to. "You think this town survives on fishing and postcards?" he called out. "You think those people pay their bills with sunsets?" Reed stepped forward. "Put your hands on the hood, Caleb." Marsh laughed, a bitter sound. "I kept men working, fed families. All you did was look away." Rowan watched him closely. He'd seen men like Marsh before, men who wrapped harm in necessity and called it leadership. "You didn't have to burn anything," Rowan said, voice calm, cutting through the noise. Marsh's gaze snapped to him. "I didn't burn people." "No," Rowan replied. "You just thought about it." Marsh's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked toward the forest, toward the RV's direction. "Fire cleans," Marsh said quietly. "Sometimes it's the only thing people listen to." The troopers moved in, cuffing him without ceremony. Marsh didn't resist. He just stared past them, as if watching something slip away. By morning, the town felt different. Not louder, not brighter, just lighter. Word spread the way it always did. Over coffee cups, across porches, through glances that lingered longer than usual. Some people looked relieved, others looked angry. A few looked ashamed. Deputy Reed walked the streets that morning without his hat. He nodded at people who wouldn't meet his eyes. He stopped by the diner. Mabel was behind the counter, apron on, hair escaping its bun as usual. "You did it," she said, not smiling. Reed nodded. "I should have sooner." Mabel poured him coffee. "You did it when it mattered." She glanced past him and smiled then. Really smiled. Eden stood just inside the door, steadier now. Valco at her side like a shadow that breathed. Mabel crossed the room and pulled her into a fierce hug. "You scared the hell out of us," she said into Eden's hair. Eden closed her eyes. "I know." Rowan watched from the doorway, uncomfortable with gratitude, as always. Mabel turned to him, eyes bright with tears and humor both. "You come to fix trails," she said. "End up fixing habits." Rowan shrugged. "Occupational hazard." The RV took longer. Weeks, not days. Rowan worked on it in the clearing where it had nearly burned, tools spread like offerings. He replaced wiring, sealed gaps, scrubbed rust where it mattered, and left it where it told the truth. He didn't restore it to glory. He restored it to function. Eden helped when she could, handing him bolts, sanding panels. Her strength came back in increments, slow, stubborn. She talked sometimes about her father, about nights parked under open skies, about learning that home was less a place and more a direction. They kept the name. North Star. Valco supervised. He lay in the shade, eyes following every movement, occasionally rising to inspect progress. Once, Rowan caught him nudging a loose panel with his nose before sitting pointedly beside it. "Yeah," Rowan muttered. "I see it." When the engine finally turned over, the sound startled birds from the trees. Eden laughed, a real laugh, surprised and bright. Rowan rested his forehead briefly against the steering wheel, eyes closed. Some things, he thought, deserved second starts. The morning they left, the forest wore its best light. Dew clung to grass. Sunlight threaded through branches like promise. The RV stood ready, paint scarred but solid, moss cleared from the roof but not forgotten. Rowan climbed into the driver's seat. Eden took the passenger side, hands resting on her knees, eyes forward. Valco jumped up between them, settling with a contented huff. Chin lifted, posture proud. Rowan started the engine. The RV rolled forward slowly at first, tires crunching leaves, then gained confidence as it reached the road. The forest opened, letting them pass. In the mirror, the trees closed again, unchanged, eternal. The North Star wasn't visible in the blue morning sky. But Rowan felt it anyway. Not overhead. Ahead. Sometimes, miracles do not arrive with thunder or light from the sky. Sometimes they come quietly. Through a dog that senses danger before flames rise. Through a man who finally listens to the signs he once ignored. Through a choice to do what is right when silence would be easier. Perhaps God does not always stop the fire. Perhaps he sends a warning instead, a feeling we cannot explain, a companion who refuses to move forward. A moment that asks us to slow down and pay attention. In our daily lives, we often rush past those moments. We ignore the small signs. We convince ourselves that silence is safer than truth. But as this story reminds us, doing the right thing, no matter how small, can save a life, heal a past, and change a future. If this story touched your heart, let it remind you that you are never truly alone. That even in the darkest woods, God may already be working ahead of you, placing guides along your path. Please take a moment to share this story with someone who may need hope today. Leave a comment and tell us what part spoke to you most. And if you believe in stories of courage, loyalty, and quiet miracles, subscribe to this channel so we can continue walking this journey together. May God bless you, protect you, and guide your steps, today and always.